All this talk I've gassed on about for a worldwide Pokemon League, it got me wondering, just out of curiosity, what's the weakest region? But then, how do we even determine how weak a slab of land in Pokemon is? So I thought, what if this were one big game of civilization? I'm gonna go about it that way and see which region is the weak link. Who's the first region to get overrun by Hoenn, led by Warmonger Metagross? If you've not played Civ, all you need to know are the 4 proper ways to win. To win, you have to develop an empire over thousands of years, and you gotta be the most advanced through science, culture, warmongering, and of course, fearmongering. But that last one, you see, as someone who grew up going to Catholic schools, you're boring me. I've done enough RE, ain't about this religion thing. How advanced, or in this case, not, are the regions in terms of science, culture, and domination? Which for that last one, on this scuffed kinda Earth, but not really planet, is like 3 categories in itself. Which I'm gonna say are native Pokemon, notable trainers, and organizations. You've got a lot of leeway for domination, where humans are at the bottom of the food chain. To simplify it even more, science and culture is the region itself, and domination is gonna be the people and Pokemon. I hope this works. This video is going to be a mess. When it comes to native Pokemon, I'm going to say legendaries count towards this, but their powers only count when it comes to throwing hands. If Kyogre shows up for Hoenn, he's showing up to bang, to throw those fins. He ain't showing up to raise the ocean till all but Hoenn stands. And Arceus, you're not going to show up probably at all, to be honest. Gonna show up and delete the files for everywhere but Sinnoh, since God apparently shows favoritism. Sinnoh would have got that religion victory before the game even begins. The regions with a smaller Pokedex and less legendaries, they're at a massive disadvantage here. Later generations like Alola have less numbers to its Pokedex, but the beef for those native Pokemon gets carried from wartime Patriot Crabrawler alone. And I guess they've got some kind of group of Skylander figures or something too, I don't know. Actually, no, Alola, you might actually be the strongest. They might as well have like 20 legendaries. The same thing happened with Kalos, except not only do they not have too many, I think they've got the smallest Pokedex overall, they've got like 71. But out of those 71, they've not got too many to hype up about either. No turbo insects here to carry the weight of this Pokedex. You've got a handful, yeah sure, you've got like Greninja, Goodra, Hawlucha, Aegislash, Florges. That's solid enough, but for every semi-decent one, you've got like 2 Pyroars or Go-Goats. That on top of the fact that there's barely any legendaries compared to most other regions. And I think overall, you've got your hands on the weakest set of native Pokemon right there. But I've got to weigh my options here. Johto could maybe take the L on having the weakest set of native Pokemon instead. It gets shafted a fair bit, but that's what you get for being a Kanto DLC pack. It's this weird middle ground Pokedex of beta Kanto Pokemon that got the axe. Things which don't know how to evolve yet, and the product of Kanto Pokemon figuring out how to bust a nut. The main thing saving it is future generations beefing up its evolutions and forms. Togekiss, Galarian, Corsola, even the mega forms it has, they pull the weight of all of those mistakes. Except you, like kid, I rate you. I'd raise one of you. And keeps you a tier above Kalos in terms of power. So overall, that makes Kalos the weakest region when it comes to native Pokemon. But what use are weaponized creatures without the right people to handle them? You can have the biggest weapons you want, but you're gonna need an even bigger weapon to use them properly. You need some noteworthy trainers to step on the front lines and fight for your land. And saying that, I'm starting to understand exactly why Kalos is historically known to surrender. With a set of gym leaders in Elite Four like this, I'd arm myself with a white flag at all times. Keep a towel handy to throw in for when those bombs start landing, those alarms are setting off, and Gordon Ramsay's metrosexual kid is the last line of defense. Every region has at least two decent trainers. Most gym leaders only have a handful, but this is X and Y's fault for having no post-game. So no rematches, at least good ones, to fight them with a full team. Their Elite Four took their title literally and have 4. The only one with a full team is the champion, and even then, most people seem to think she's the worst one. Don't even set me off on the rivals, alright? The Sideman horde you only hung out with because your parents were mates. Except Serena, she's alright actually. But the rest of yous, you're looking like friends you'd be forced to have at Bible camp. I'd rather be forced to go to Catholic school than be forced to hang out with this school of Catholics. This whole video has been actually very hard to make and think about. This is like my rest in between rounds. Kalos, you've made this one so easy. You make everything easy when it comes to roasting. When the only decent trainer is yourself. Since the new age began for Pokemon, we've been in this kind of a weird phase of evil teams that are not really being that evil, or even that threatening to be honest. Now they're just actual goons. Who's the last one you could really say is genuinely evil? All I can think of is Lysander. What a dashing rogue. Now that is an evil goon jockey. Look at the man and tell me he ain't gonna turn heel on you by the time you get your 6th badge. So is he evil? Oh, blatantly. Your man looking like an obvious Disney twist villain. But was he that powerful? Compared to your Giovanni's and your even your Cyrus, he'd be a mid-tier henchman in any of these squads. But all I'm saying is if he worked for Giovanni, he'd be traveling by a hot air balloon. He's fronting his battles with a pyro. That's about as 4th gym badge as you can get. But I can't go in too hard on Kalos for this one. Team Flare as a whole, pretty average, but they aren't that weak. The weakest set of goons, and I hate to say it because I do rate a lot of them, but Team Yell has to be you. They're just a fandom. Bunch of sweaty Carlin drinkers who support their local by stalking their hometown Twitch stop. Giovanni has enough leverage to do business worldwide, and he's a top Kanto trainer in his own right. Team Flare, well, I mean, they're not that strong, but they tried getting that weapon that could wipe all life off of the planet. They at least tried to be feared. Team Yell's most powerful weapon, probably cancel culture. So with those 3 categories sorted, you want to talk dominance, having an iron stub over the world. Kalos, yeah, it's Kalos. Kalos is your weakest bet on getting the job done. The weakest Pokemon region from a domination or warmongering standpoint. So I've judged the native Pokemon and its people, but from here, how do I even judge the region itself in the context of how strong it is? If I'm going by Civ rules, I guess I'm gonna have to go by how developed they are. So who's the least likely to get that science victory? Who'd be the last to make it to the moon? At first, my gut instinct was telling me that Alola is the region with the least developed technology. From memory alone, just seems like a bunch of huts and ruins. But then they've got the observatory, Ether Paradise, they're over here opening up testosterone portals. They're ahead of the curve a bit here. I can't even mug off Kalos again for this one. They run the Pokeball factory, they've got power plants, they're holding their own scientifically. Kanto is arguably the most scientific. Its whole gimmick is based around that. It's meant to be industrial and progressive. And that's exactly why Johto is the weakest region scientifically. You see, both Kanto and Johto are parallels to each other, not just in a literal sense. Kanto is very modern and technological, whereas Johto is traditional and old-fashioned. They were designed specifically with this in mind. And I never knew about this until looking into it, but now that you mention it, yeah, Johto's dead. It's just Goldenrod City surrounded by a bunch of farms and villages. Now, I rate Johto really highly. I'm a glorified Gen 1er for loving the red and blue expansion pack so much. But as much as I love Johto, the most advanced thing in that region is a radio tower. It's really hard not to argue that they're the most technologically deficient compared to the other regions. But I will say, fair enough, the Pokeball was invented in Johto. I'll give you that one, Johto. That's one big thing I'll give you big brain science points for. But even then, they're not mass-produced there. They're mass-produced in the other scientifically developed regions like Kanto, Hoenn, and even you, Kalos. The culture of each region is going to be quite difficult to compare with each other, because none of the regions are actually bad when it comes to this aspect. They're all just a bit better than one another. But when you really think about it, Kanto is probably the weakest when it comes to culture, or even tourism as a whole. They're very industrial focused. Kanto would be good if you're looking for a job, but it's not exactly dream holiday location. You're not going to get Crabrawlers on tour over here in Kanto. I can't see Kanto competing too well when it comes to culture, aside from maybe the Safari Zone and the SS An. There's nothing really exclusive to Kanto. Even then, you're probably only on the SS An to go to where the sesh is down at Alola. Other regions, they already have the big department stores, the museums, the game corner. The game corner. Maybe that's where the tourism comes in. It's the one place you can get on the slots. Everywhere else is banned them. But even then, everywhere else has a lot more to offer than Kanto in this aspect. This is where Johto gets the edge on Kanto for being traditional and old-fashioned. It's got a lot of mythological culture going for it. But even then, probably still the second weakest culture to Kanto. You think about Ho-Oh, the Unknown, all of that stuff, the Johto seems like it'd be one of the top places for culture. But you're never competing with Alola and Hoenn over here looking like two giant water parks while you're sat there looking like a Japanese retirement home. Compared to the other 6 regions, Johto and Kanto are having trouble competing here. Everywhere else is either tropical or has giant cities everywhere. The only place even remotely like Johto, whose culture relies on mythology, is Sinnoh. And your spicy Fearow isn't drawing more of that tourist poker dollar than the spawn point of God's egg, and therefore the spawn point of every other god. Even Sinnoh has more to do with the Unknown than Johto does. So Kanto is the weakest region in terms of culture and generating tourism as a whole, but only because of how good the other regions are. Johto is a faraway second. based on how I've gone about this, what is the weakest Pokemon region overall? Well, it's obviously one of you two, Kalos and Johto. Even if I scored each topic out of 10, they're still both neck and neck. For Johto, they may have arguably the weakest set of Pokemon, and it's definitely the least progressive piece of known land this mainline series has ever seen. So native Pokemon are like a 5, but trainers like Lance, Jasmine, Whitney, Claire, and even Faulkner when he brings out the full testosterone team, trainers are probably a solid 7 out of 10. As for organizations, Team Rocket are a top squad, but they're out of their prime without Giovanni, so what would probably be a 9 for Kanto's prime Team Rocket is probably like a 6 for Johto. And for the reasons I've already gone into, their science is a dead 2 out of 10, and culture it's like a 5 out of 10, which isn't bad, and they get an extra point for eventually getting a battle frontier, but still one of the lowest relative to the other 6 regions not named Kanto. Then for Kalos, their land is well developed, but the sidemen that reside on it are not. Native Pokemon, solid 3 out of 10. And for trainers, no, you know what? Just for Serena and the person I'm playing as, I'm gonna give you at least a 2, or else I'm mugging myself off. Team Flare's kinda average, 5 out of 10. But their science is solid, not quite discovering aliens like Hoenn, but not exactly living in bamboo huts like Johto either. It's a 7 out of 10 there. And the culture's quite on point. It's not quite the all-inclusive trip to Alola, but it's really far away from the holiday resort of a dark cave Kanto's got going for it, so it's getting an 8 out of 10. Can't deny Kalos that for having the biggest and most populated city in the known world so far. So by my judgment, tally those up, and it's Johto with 25 out of 50, and Kalos with 25 out of 50. God damn it, why not even do the score system? Alright then, in terms of dominance, Johto slumps Kalos, but when you factor in science and culture, Johto gets toasted up by Kalos and their fat laser beam. So the weakest region really depends on what factors you think matter most. Kalos may have spawned the biggest city in the Pokemon world, but we're still waiting for it to spawn a decent trainer. Most populated city in the world, not one of yous knows how to throw a punch. But on the other hand, Johto has slightly stronger Pokemon and plenty of trainers who show up to bang, but Kalos has a Pokeball factory, while you're that underdeveloped, you're still making Pokeballs out of fruit. And all of the culture it does have comes from how not developed it is. So for me personally, overall, I'd have to say Johto's the weakest region. You're far too dependent on being Kanto's sideman. But it's alright. It's alright, who even cares? Even if you are the weakest region, you're still that S-rank game. You win where it matters.